Yo, what's up YouTube? I'm Max, and this is my affirmation video for a book I've been writing through the Napoleon Hill Foundation called 3 Feet from Gold. I basically just copied it here, just like an affirmation, and then I'm affirming here on the camera. So thinking about it twice, it's affirmations. This is just repeated affirmations. But right now we're on chapter 15. This is association. It's like a story that I'm reading so you can listen. Success requires no explanation. Failure permits no alibis. You ready? When Greg rose the next morning, he dialed his phone. One of the mentors he trusted most. Hi, Don, it's me. I spoke with our friend Charlie yesterday before he could finish. Green cut him off. Yes, I got a call from him myself. What do you think? It makes sense. It makes sense. Greg said, this project never had been about me. It's about the message. That's the most important thing. I just don't know anyone in the industry who's strong enough to give us the support we're talking about. Thought you might say that. Let me give you a number. Just like that, an obvious anticipation of the call Don Green had been thinking about would be the best candidate. Her name was Sharon Letcher. She was working with us on a few other projects in the pipeline, giving her a buzz to see if it was something where she would do well. I know she can add a lot to this book. Do I know her work? Inquired Greg, and when she was the author, I'm sure you do. She was co-author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Poor Dad, Rich Dad, Rich, and 14 other books in the Rich Dad series, Rich, and combined that think sold close to 27 million books all over the world. Before that, she worked with the inventor of talking books for the kids and helped grow to sell the company. She has a lot of publishing experience, and she also credits Think and Grow Rich, Think and Grow Rich, Think and Grow Rich for inspiring much of her own success. Come to it. And she was also recently appointed to the President of the United States' Advisory Council on Financial Literacy. Holy smokes. That's incredible. I just met John Hope Bryant. He's Vice Chair Counsel. It's a really small world. I give her a shout out right away. Green said, there's no accidents, and you're going to find good friends, and you'll both continue to increase in financial literacy all over the world, even if she can work with you right now. I am sure I can give you good counsel on what you need to do. Greg laughed to himself. That was with word good counsel again. Maybe this was the answer that needed. Like faith, I am stickability. Words live by someone else, do you say, in the telephone meeting, which went very smoothly, seemed to be able to provide exactly what they both needed, what the book needed. She understood the situation and asked Greg to send her an unfinished draft manuscript, and then said to him, don't worry, Greg, just keep moving forward. Don has done a lot of things and faith in him, and don't give up. After a few tense days, Greg called her to see what he thought of the work. First of all, I think you have a gold mine here, she said, and noted, no pun intended, you have been rich in vision, and you do what you want, and you accomplish it, and you have a bunch of great stories, which have wonderful advice, but to keep the reader in mind. And when you're acting as if you're talking to the reader, it will help the story flow better. I think my story flows great. I also think we need to tie in the original wisdom of Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill, I think I am Napoleon Hill. These great success principles he originally described in Think and Grow Rich on my other videos. And these people are mostly from the same group, the same demographic. We need to mix it up a bit. We need to add a softer tone, as well as include more diversity, so the audience can experience the movie. It's a movie. I record movies. You just can't read it. Insights and connections flowing quickly. She laid out a plan of action for Greg for him to help the project get back on course, offering her freely. He popped the question, asking if she'd be willing to work with him in finishing the book. Without hesitation, she agreed and to step in to revamp the project. We wanted to bring those entrepreneurs and leaders and the right readers, and I have a great respect for them. They are focused on the missions. They are my companions and the customers first, and they didn't allow our egos to get in the way. The real people with heartfelt advice. Readers will relate to their wisdom and their willingness to share and wish what they dealt with tough times in the past to great successes. Sharon started at the beginning and rewrote the entire project. In fact, the book doubled in length. As Greg went through the manuscript, you could feel the impact of her changes. You could feel the impact. The contributors seemed to come alive as they shared their wisdom. And then there was a feminine side here that needed to be interviewed more women. Rhonda Byrne. She noted, today's generation has created lots of successful women leader pioneers. They faced challenges that were probably similar to those that faced the old folks and you've probably interviewed. But the women we have a different perspective and a unique approach to those that were sure challenges. The difference in perspective is worth sharing. It's time for you to go meet with another business icon, she said, humorously in a tone. And yes, that is a woman. And yes, she is a woman. And yes. With that, Greg, you're off to another interview. Greg made the most of the plane ride to Tennessee by doing a bit of research for the upcoming meeting. Sitting next to him was a good-looking, dark-haired guy wearing glasses. He figured the man might be a movie star or something. Probably. Looks like one. One thing for sure, it didn't matter where Greg was or what he was doing. He saw someone who looked interesting to him. He made it a part to introduce himself. Hi, I'm Greg, he said as he reached out his hand hoping for a Hollywood connection. Mike Lane, the same man who exchanged greetings 30 minutes into the flight. Greg leaned in, was much far from the Hollywood type, yet his story was the one that made a heck of a daytime drama. He was on his way to connect on a connecting flight to attend his international space training program. The aspiring offer was pleased to learn that he was an acquaintance for the history accepted program, which a college degree, and was became the midst of a building and something in a space elevator. What is a space elevator? It's something that we're trying to figure out. And Mike explained in a manner that it rehearses from the many interviews on television and magazines that went out throughout the whole world. Now imagine swinging and singing and living and from a string around your head with a ball attached at the end. The string would remain right as we nod. The plane of the elevator works much of the same way. The idea is to build a floating station in the calmest part of the ocean. From there, we will shoot a rocket. Space thousands of miles out. We're out of there. Once in orbit, we release a long cable made from something called nanotubes. These tubes are super thin and light, but stronger than steel. We allow gravity to pull the cable down to Earth. Others in the cabin began eavesdropping while Mike continued his tale, creating many seminars in his planes in which we are becoming a habit in which was grown and we are starting to enjoy, along with other passengers. Apparently, once the cable is connected to the floating dock, it will act as if its own anchor, kind of like the ball at the end of the string. We will then attach a cart of all sorts to a nanotube ribbon and use a laser system to guide it up to space. Hence the space elevator. Looking around, Greg was pleased to see that he was not only one with an amazed expression on his face. That's incredible, he encouraged, wanting to know more. I have to ask you, what does the outside world think of your idea? They pretty much think I'm nuts. Everyone listening is laughing and at this moment are commenting, ha ha ha. And are you? Greg asked. Not at all. I know this is the most scientific step. The concept behind it is once the cable is in place, we can release the solar collectors cheaply and easily to bring alternative energy to the masses. It will bring power to those who would not be able to get it otherwise. There it is again, the same message heard so many times before. When asked about his certainty for the project, Mike gave an answer that would stay for Greg for years. Greg had made it a point to learn strategies of successful people on now he had kept their own fires burning on which seemed like people wanted to stomp them out. Let me ask you, Mike said with a funny expression, if you knew what you had a cure for cancer, would you stop people from making it happen? Not what would you do, or would you keep going, or what would motivate you? Who would stop you? If you knew in your heart you could change the world, Greg replied in the most sincere tone that he had never uttered. Nothing. Writing in his notes, he scribbled his first question to himself. What do you know? What do you know? What do you know? Mike finished with this thought. That's how I feel. That nothing will stop me from making my dreams come true. There may be obstacles, there may be setbacks and delays, but they won't matter. This is what I'm going to give for my life. As the plane touched ground and the two exchanged contacts and Greg headed towards his new meeting, traveling to Tennessee, many people recall memories of Dollywood Graceland over the bloopers. For Greg, the trip came from a completely different perspective than which he had thought it would, and which he had viewed success from that day forward. As he approached Nashville Hotel, he felt the cold winter breeze as he touched his cheeks. This is not the usual California sunshine. I'm used to it, and which in himself is watching the steam of his breath burr out from his mouth like a dragon's fire. He recognized her before she could introduce herself. It was Debbie Fields, known best for her Miss Fields cookie empire. Thanks for meeting with me, Greg said. It's a true pleasure. He gave her a boyish welcome because his favorite chocolate chip cookies were on his mind. The pleasure's all mine. I'm honored to be part of it and to do with the Napoleon Hill Foundation. She responded warmly. Taking a seat in the hotel restaurant, he started right in questioning her to share on how she started the franchise. When I was a young woman, 14 years of age, as a matter of fact. We had a rule in the house. We had to eat everything on a plate. One evening, we were served something that I was just simply not going to eat. I remember sitting there until midnight. My mother came in furious, and by the minute, "What do you do?" "I keep sitting there," she replied, taking a sip of water, pausing before finishing. Finally, Mom caved in, and I had to go to bed. Greg said, "That's a great story, but what does that have to do with the cookie empire?" "Everything," she explained. From then on, I began making my own meals, and although we only had, let's say, inexpensive ingredients to choose from, I discovered that I loved baking. When I got my first money from babysitting, rather than spending it on going to the movies, like most kids, I used the purchase for the best ingredients I could get my hands on, like Nestle chocolate pieces and the best ground flour and so on. And when I went home and whipped up the very own first batch of cookies, now I'm going to have to let your friend Ron Glosser from Hershey know that you cheated on him. Greg joked, "Ha, that's funny." Landing with another question, did your family love them? Did they? Everyone did. And by the way, Ron is a lovely man. I met him last year. At a business conference, she continued, from then on, I really caught the bug and made the decision to go into the business one day. And in addition, I also made a promise to myself to use only the best ingredients and to never settle or less than perfection. Knowing very well as the wisdom that was coming from, Greg picked up his pen and got ready to write down his next thought. I built the entire Miss Fields brand with one simple philosophy: good enough never is. That's a great way to look at things, Greg remarked. I can't tell you how many times I've tried doing things halfway, and now that I've reflected, not one time did that attempt ever work out. Debbie Fields just raised her hands and shrugged her shoulders, and "Oh, what do you now do?" a type of expression as she said, "We set our standards so high that even that flows were, we set them so high that even the flows were considered excellent. Considered flaws? What? Flawless. How old are you when you appeared at the first store? Believe it or not, she was only 20. I was married and very nervous, but I knew I was onto something." What your mother's response was is she was proud. Greg inquired. While looking back now, I can definitely say that I credit her with my success. She was supportive, the complete opposite. She told me that I would fail, that running a business would be hard, and I would never make it, and I should quit and give up on what I was ever doing, and that's just not creative. Greg's eyes opened up the wide, unexpected response. Debbie continued, I used her doubt as my catalyst. Her voice rang in my ears as a constant reminder to move forward. In retrospect, she did a tremendous favor. That's a great thing. A great way to look at things, Greg said, a little surprised by her answer. One of Napoleon Hill's lessons came to mind. Miss Field had taken adversity, her mother's lack of faith, and turned it into an advantage. Beats the alternative for sure, she replied. When you are doing something you love, you should never let another person stand in your way. Greg realized that is right. In that short sentence, she summarized why so many people seem to fail. It wasn't that their goals were too high or that they lacked ambition to succeed. It was that they allowed others to set their limitations for them. Greg remembered to scribble in the notebook, never let other people stand in your way. Turn adversity into your advantage. Turn their doubt into your catalyst. For me, she said, my mother's lack of confidence in and me was the inspiration I needed. She was the inspiration I needed. Now look. From that day forward, I promised myself to give 100% until I made my dream come true. Remember that good enough never is. And Greg finished the sentence, never is. Good enough never is. Thanks again. By the way, did you choose the name Miss Fields? How did you choose that name? Especially since you were only 20 years old when you opened the first retail shop. I believed in what I was doing and wanted to let people know I stood behind my product. She answered in a distinct tone, direct tone. If you have something that is worthwhile, then put your name on it. I'm maxed out because I'm more than an hour passed by before they even realized that they shared the story after so many stories of the difficulties in which drove attaining her goals. Fields had always said that her work was like running in quicksand. You need to be constantly moving or you'll sink. You need to be constantly thinking. You need to be constantly thinking. Always be ready to change your direction in a moment's notice and never give in to the fear of others or what might happen. You just have to keep moving and run away from them. Greg thought to himself, how many times have I given up at the first sight of struggle? How many times have I felt others crush my dreams? No more, he resolved, staring at the determined woman. He had no longer let other people's doubts paralyze him. Instead, he promised himself he would turn their doubts into his inspiration, a catalyst. He would turn adversity into advantage. Debbie Fields understood that to gain more from life, you must do more. Her story of a challenging success was a blueprint for achievement that she explained in the most colorful way. Greg had a better understanding of why Sharon wanted to include the feminine perspective in the book. It was apparent that no matter what people had done or had met in the business, and they were all basically the same story, just had different ways, different perspectives, with all different emotional challenges. Debbie reminded of an earlier interview that we had with Evander Holyfield, who said, set the highest standards. I set the highest standards. Highest standards. There were no free rides and no simple steps. Success, Greg realized, is about having a vision, being willing to moving towards it, and not giving up when you know you're on life's path. Some people get to choose a section, others get the opposite. And it's up to each person to decide what's worth listening to. From the airport hotel, he called David these days and had no expectations, good or bad or indifferent, but he did decide, and he would consistently reach out to his brother and be there for him, no matter what. Still counting days, bro, David said. I'm 2 weeks sober again, one day at a time. Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Yes, not picking up a drink is the primary thing. I am a success story each day. I don't drink. Greg smiled despite himself. A one-day success. I'll take that. I'll take 1 day of success. Okay, now that was a chapter from the book 3 Feet from Gold through the Napoleon Hill Foundation. I'm just going to take it back here really quick. I just like to take it back to the future. Oh, yeah. There you go. That was chapter 15. That's association. And success requires no explanation. Failure permits no alibis. Through 3 Feet from Gold, Napoleon Hill Foundation, Think and Grow Rich. Affirmation video. My name's came from these people. I'm Max. Thanks.